Welcome to Chasing the Narrative, my show where I talk about what I want to talk about because it's my show and not your show. And this week, I want to talk about my good friend Tyler Bortel. But why do you have any interest in learning about Tyler Bortel? You probably don't, but you should. And I'm going to tell you why. So, a couple years ago, I met Tyler through our Discord, and he's a Tyranid player, and so naturally we had lots to talk about. Built a bit of a friendship with Tyler, ran into him at a tournament, said, hey, we do RTTs here at the house. Why don't you come up, bring Lucas, and play with us? And they come up, these two guys, with masks appropriately, and we spend the whole day playing 40K with them. And at the end of the whole day, someone says to me, I can't believe that Tyler is only 21 years old. And as a 40-something-year-old, I like literally felt my entire face shrivel. Like if it had been a cartoon, I would have turned to dust at that moment. So Tyler had been wearing a mask and had this giant beard underneath it, which I can't grow at all. And so to me, there's no way that this kid was 21 years old. And also, he played 40K great. He was polite. He was articulate. He was fun to be around. And I'm like, how is any of this possible? Because at 22, I was a massive jackass. And Chuck's like, yeah, I can confirm that. You were awful. And so I was cocky. I was arrogant. I had a lot of mental health journey ahead of me. So when I meet someone, a young person in particular, who's really headed in a neat direction, I think it's worth it that we talk to them. So I want to talk to Tyler. I want to talk about that because I've asked him to host the Best in Faction, the Next Generation podcast. He's the showrunner for that show with his good friends Lucas and Nick. I wouldn't have asked him to do that if I didn't think he had important things to say. So let's have him talk about who he is, so that when you see him at Charity Hammer, at tournaments, and the tournament results from the West Coast on TNG, you have kind of an understanding of who Tyler is, because it'll make that content more fun for you. So, Tyler, are you uncomfortable now that I've said all those nice things about you?
Incredibly so. I would like to go home now.
You are home already.
Oh dear.
So, great. We like to start with a certain level of discomfort and build from there. So let's start with the easy questions. Tyranids primarily. What other armies do you like?
I started on Tau, so I still love my Tau. Not right now. I wouldn't dare betray the faction, but I do love them. GSC, ESP, obviously, as an extension of the Hive Mind. Big fan of them. And then I also have a large pile of Iron Hands because I keep ending up with the armies that are too strong and not playing them.
Fair enough. So why Tyranids? Was it a play reason, a lore reason, a model reason? How did young Tyler decide to play Tyranids?
Yeah, I initially got into them somewhat accidentally. A buddy of mine was getting out of the hobby to go join the FBI. He's an interesting character. Yeah, and he offloaded like maybe.
God, I hear that so much. Everybody leaving 40K to join the FBI all the time.
It just seems to happen.
Yeah.
But he offloaded like I was I don't know 14 or 15 at the time, so he offloaded maybe 1,000 or 1,500 points of bugs for like $120. They were in terrible condition, but they're what a 15-year-old needed to play this game. And I fell in love with them mechanically. This is a movement game, and that is the thing that I'm enjoying the most. It was killing, like I think I take the opposite approach to this game to someone like our good friend Violence Vanilla, who is all about the killing. I very much enjoy playing the game in a plan that requires as little dice as possible, and that means not killing the enemy usually. And Tyranids have given me a really good avenue to sort of do that and focus on the movement and the jank, which is what I think I get the most out of in this hobby.
Yeah, I'll share a tangent on that because it's something I thought of yesterday that I know you'll appreciate. The last time Craft World Eldar were good, they had a ridiculous number of rerolls. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of knew what the expected damage was that something was going to do. And now they don't have as many rerolls. And when I play them, I literally get irritated at my brain for not predicting what's going to happen. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Like the more that we can control the game without rolling dice, the better. But there's plenty of places to hear you talk about 40K. So let's learn about Tyler. So you're from the Bay Area, right?
Yes, indeed. North Bay, San Rafael, born and raised.
All right. Even though you've got a bunch of baseball hats behind you, and none of them look like it's the Giants. I see the Yankees back there. Are you a Yankees fan? Is that what's happening?
No, I played on a lot of baseball teams growing up.
Okay. That's a little bit different for a lot of 40K, especially people who had your kind of path through college, which we'll talk about. What did you love baseball as a kid? Was it a big hobby for
Oh,
you?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad is a huge fan, so I ball was my first word. There's pictures of me at 6 months old in baseball uniforms. Um, and I started playing when I was, 4 or 5, played Little League all the way. Was never like physically the right, athletic gifts or anything. But baseball, as it turns out, is one of the sports that if you just keep doing it, you'll eventually get good enough that you can play, I guess. Like I had to drop out of basketball at like maybe 13 years old because I'm just horrifically uncoordinated. But baseball, like 40K, is all reps, and that was something that I was able to concentrate on to the point that I was captain of my varsity team in high school.
What
Just
position
out
did you
of
play?
I played it all over a little bit. In high school, I played the hot corner over at third base, and then would play some outfield as well. Mostly in there for my bat and my ability to take a hit.
Okay, get hit by the ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
That was the rules. If you play third base, you have to be ready to get your nose broke. And I don't think it ever broke properly, but I definitely took a good number there.
Okay. And so, as a kid, who was your team? Were you a Giants fan?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to try to move my camera around, but I have probably 2/3 of the people who have played for the Giants in the last 6 years in bobbleheads up on a shelf up here. They are they have a very special place in my heart.
I was, of course, a big Mariners fan, and which is like being a Giants fan, only with a lot more disappointment. It's
I
very
was gonna say
similar.
I was a Giants fan for the absolute prime years of the franchise. I
All of
saw
Barry
three.
Bonds, pretty much. Like almost all of him playing is in your lifetime, right?
Yeah, I sort of was able to appreciate the scene sort of on the like just after his retirement. I actually got to train with him when I was in high school for a little while. But the three championships, which were what, like 10, 12, 14, I was going to playoff games for all three of those. It was an amazing time to be alive and be a sports fan.
That's fun. Um, so when you played baseball on these teams, and you were the varsity captain at one point, were these teams ever good? Were you
Uh
ever were you ever or did you were you ever on a team that had high pressure games and was
oh
trying to
yeah,
make something happen?
for sure. So like the great thing about playing, high school sports is that your team might be terrible, but your league is around the same level as your league.
Right.
So we were like the biggest fish in the smallest possible pond. Like we had a school in our league who had only switched to being co-ed 2 years ago, so they only had freshmen and sophomores on their men's team, and that was it. And they were in our league, and we beat them, but that was our league.
I've been wondering about the people that are good at performing at competitive 40K that did competitive sports. That's the thing I've been wondering about whether, well, because I know like Anthony mentioned in his interview that once you've been punched in the face on a timer, right, and know that you better fight back or you're going to die. Once
Yeah.
you've done that, that 40K games just aren't that scary, and
Hmm.
I think that that's fair. But I just wonder about like if you've been in high stress performance situations before, and if how that whether that feels different or similar now that you're doing high end 40K competition. Like, does it feel at all similar doing the top table at the end of a GT to when you were the last out, so to speak?
Oh yeah, for sure. Being the last out, or I have like a real good memory. Like my sophomore year of high school was probably the best year, one of the best years for our team. We didn't have any seniors on the team that year for whatever reason. So like all the younger guys were really expected to step up, and I ended up in a playoff game, needing to knock in the last run, to win the game and prevent going into extra innings. And I went a little bit unorthodox. I have a really big philosophy that comes from baseball of like always swing at first pitch strikes, which is questionable advice for baseball, but I think is really good advice in life. Which is to say, if you have a good opportunity to do the thing, don't wait for another one. Take it immediately and execute.
Mm-hmm.
And that was exactly what happened. And was it a strike technically? No, but I knew that I could put that ball into right center field, and that was all we needed to do to win the game. So do that, call it a day, go home. No need for anything flashier than that. And that mentality has definitely flipped over into 40K a lot. Of the okay, I could absolutely go for a big flashy play this turn and do some crazy consolidations and break coherency and, do really cool stuff that would really impress people. But this is the quickest path to victory. I'm going to go for the simple thing, and I'm going to execute on it immediately and not wait for my opponent to have an opportunity to do some counterplay.
Yeah, I think that's wise. One of the things we've talked about before is we were both raised in religion, and my dad's an Episcopal priest, and he does a sermon on the. I'm sure you've heard it, but for their benefit, I'll do the quick version of it. Guys on top of the building, city's flooding. Branch goes by. He thinks, no, that's probably not safe. I'll wait here and God will save me. Dude on a log goes by, says, come on, come with me. He says, no, God's going to save me. Off it goes. People in a boat come by with a motor. They're like, dude, come on. He's like, no, God's going to save me. Water's up to here. And he goes, God, I thought you were going to save me. And God goes, dude, I sent you a branch. I sent you a log. I sent you a boat. God helps those who help themselves. And while I'm not particularly religious now, I love that. I love that message. Right. I love the idea that you can make your own opportunity, right? You can see it in front of you and you can just go after it. And sometimes the simplest opportunity is the one to go after. Right.
Absolutely.
Cool. What do you think about while we're talking about it, what do you think of the downfall of baseball? It's really imploding a bit. What do you think about it?
I think it seems to me interestingly timed with what feels like the renaissance of basketball.
Yeah.
That seems to be a two-part shift in that direction. I'm not, as an insider, it's very hard for me to talk about what appeals to more casuals about the game. But I've taken people to games in the last couple of years, and everyone seems to be really enjoying it once they get there. It's a matter of getting people in the door to appreciate something in the first place. I think the fact that most baseball, like a lot of people can enjoy like a 3-hour-long baseball game in a 10-minute highlight reel, is simultaneously a big detractor for getting people in this short attention span economy to go get invested, but is also not being taken advantage of at all. There's so much advertisement and ways to make other sports, basketball is just the sport that I know the best outside of baseball, flashy and exciting to draw people in, that just isn't happening with baseball. There's no video game support. There's there's nothing on YouTube and TikTok and whatnot that gets me really excited to watch. And I think they need a little more, pomp and circumstance to make it happen.
Yeah, I think they're widely criticized as not being good at appealing to youth, and not being willing to evolve the game like football and basketball have been doing. Anyways, the thing that appealed to me as a young man about baseball was the math. And I don't know I know you enjoy math quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you enjoy the math of baseball? Did you enjoy the different statistics and knowing what everybody's stats are and knowing that somebody hits better against a left-hander than a right? Do you like all that stuff?
Oh, for sure. I absolutely love the more contemporary stuff is all about shifts. I find that really, really interesting. And that's a really cool way to... Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, get on base is what it's about now.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of fun with that. I really also, as a player, I really love eating shifts. I used to take everything oppo, and when anyone would play that against me, it was just so much fun to get
just to... Just so we're clear. He was eating... Shifts, yes.
And to sort of have the play and the counterplay. I also really love the tactics of it. Yeah. You get all the moves, your double switches, and trying to get different people into different places at the right times. I love all the predictive elements of it, of pitch counting and the psychology. There's just every level of the game has something more interesting happening if you look at it a little closer. And that was just a ton of fun. Because it's a mental game more than it lets on, I think, and more than some other sports I found to be, at least.
Yeah, it's pretty strategic. Okay, I think that's enough about baseball. So, basic childhood stuff. What do your parents do, or what did they do when you were born? If they don't do things anymore.
No, my parents both went to law school. My dad is a criminal defense attorney. He covers mostly DUI and DMV related cases. Okay. My mom was they met in law school. My mom was an estate attorney, but ended up sort of taking an extended maternity leave and has been basically being a stay-at-home mom my entire life.
That's cool. So two parents that are lawyers.
Hmm.
Do you find that makes you kind of litigious? Do you
Yes.
find that you like to argue and you want to be very specific in your arguments?
Yeah, you have to be really careful with words in this household, and that is absolutely spilled over both into the way that I play 40K and the way that I interact with people in general.
Mm-hmm.
My mom is a very intellectual person, so you got to be careful with this, that, and the other thing. Anything said can and will be held against you.
Mm-hmm.
So be careful with that. Be precise, and like never take anything personally.
Mm-hmm.
Really important idea. Be ready to accept things, but also like be ready to listen to people for what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from I mean, my dad defends people who a lot of people might say are like the absolute scum of the earth. If you've been arrested for driving drunk, you're endangering the lives of innocent people.
Yes, but it's also a human being that made a mistake,
Exactly.
right?
So trying to identify what that person's motivations were and how to make sure that they're getting taken care of, as well as that justice is being served appropriately. Not giving up on people is a really important core value, as well as the safety and the constant reminders about driving that come with that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to know that both of your parents are lawyers because my parents were a teacher and a priest.
Hmm.
My dad was also a stockbroker. He worked in politics. He did a bunch of stuff, but talking is both of my parents' forte,
Hmm.
and specificity is your parents' forte. And when we first met, and the first time we talked about religion, remember when early on in
Hmm.
our friendship, and we had a
Yeah.
fairly in-depth conversation. In
Hmm.
that, I found you to be very literal. That if I
Yes.
was trying to make a point and I
Hmm.
used a word that you interpreted differently, we kind of got shot off in a
Hmm.
different direction. So just an interesting thing about difference in raising. I think you are, in general, I think in the way you communicate and the way you like to receive communication, I would say you're fairly literal. Do you agree with that? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I very much enjoy the use of metaphor and figurative language. I studied philosophy. I really enjoy reading, but when it comes to anything that becomes a little bit contentious, I think I worry at times that in real life I can be that sort of player that everyone hates, of the like suddenly technical games. Not in
Mm-hmm.
40K. I'm always technical in 40K, but in communication where it's like, oh wait, by the way, this just got serious. We got to be real careful here with what
Mm-hmm.
what words mean. So yeah, I get what you're driving at. I might. Hilarious enough, I might not use the word literal to describe this thing. I might look for a
Perfect.
different word, but
What word would
absolutely
you
what you're
use?
what you're going for. I might use words like
Scrum pearlescent.
I might say precise or
Yeah.
meticulous. I like precise though. I think that's
Precise is a good word.
that's
I
the
didn't
one I'm
mean
going with.
literal in a bad way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I meant that if I write you a sentence over the
Hmm.
internet,
Hmm.
you are going to read it exactly the way that it's written.
Yeah,
And
that's
you're
a fair
not going to
assessment.
you're not going to presume intonation. And if I'm kidding, I need to make it obvious. That's what I would say. But that's not unique to you. It's
Hmm.
just something that I think is interesting. Okay. So we've talked about a bit about your childhood. You are going to graduate high school. In high school, first of all, I wanted to ask you this. When you were an elementary schooler, what did you want to do for a living? Do you remember?
When I was a little kid, I remember specifically wanting to be an artist or a painter of some
Okay.
kind, because they wore berets, and I thought fancy hats were definitely the right avenue to go. I later learned that you can actually wear a hat and not be a painter. I
Yes.
ended up painting a lot and wearing a lot of fancy hats, though, so I'm calling that mission accomplished.
I see your tournament hat behind you.
Yeah, I've got a number of them.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I would picture you in the one that's on your far left on the other side of your shelf there that's barely in frame. That's
mhm.
the sort of hat I would expect you to be in at a tournament. Okay, so in high school, you clearly decided to go to Northern Oregon for college.
Mhm.
Did you know what you wanted to do in college in high school?
Uh, I think so. I don't feel like I ended up with a lot of agency in that. I felt like once you get weeded out as a STEM kid, there's really no way to get yourself back out of that. As much as I really enjoyed the philosophy courses I took in high school, writing courses I took in high school, I really like toyed with the idea of becoming a writer. It would have been a lot of fun, but as soon as you tell someone, "Oh, I really enjoy math and like math competitions, and I love physics," they're like, "Oh, you're going to study physics now, right?" go, because our society praises those skills as being more valuable. So I was fairly confident that I was going to study physics in undergraduate, on the way out of high school. Yeah.
Okay, so you went to college and you studied physics,
Mm-hmm.
which you call quantum computing, or quantum computing is the subfaction of physics. We're going to talk in the next part about what quantum computing is, but for the purposes of this conversation, is quantum computing a part of physics?
Well, it's sort of an intersectional discipline that's part physics, part computer science, and the specific thing that I do is part chemistry. But I come at it from a very physics-oriented angle. My degree is officially in physics, though my next degree will probably be specifically in quantum computing.
Okay, you've probably figured out, everybody, that Tyler's pretty smart. And there are several things that I have not taken the time to understand that Tyler's going to explain to me in part two. So if you want to hear the young person explain to the old how technology works, I'm going to ask about NFTs, I'm going to ask about quantum computing, and I'm also going to ask about blockchain/cryptocurrency. We're going to talk about all of those from a kind of math and science nerd point of view. I am a math and science nerd, so it should be fun. Okay, but back to the current conversation. So you go to college, you're in college, you're getting your degree in quantum computing, and you are playing 40K, and then suddenly in college, your life changes fairly drastically when you start doing well at 40K. So what is the actual timeline between Tyler, the nobody knows person, and now where I've made you do a podcast? You edit shows for Frontline, you edit shows for us. Mm-hmm. You talk 40K 90% of your day. Mm-hmm. How fast of a ramp up was that for you? How fast did your life change to this heavy 40K focus that you have now?
Yeah, I think a lot of it ends up coinciding with the pandemic. On the way into college, Lucas and I, for a bit of background, because he was mentioned earlier, we grew up together in Northern California. Uh-huh. We went to middle school together, went to different high schools, and then we both ended up by complete accident in college in Portland, Oregon. Different schools, but our dorms were actually closer together in Portland than our houses are in California. So that was fantastic. We ended up hanging out a lot because it was difficult to find exactly what our social groups were going to be in college. But we were playing semi-competitive, right? We had left California intrigued by the idea of competitive 40K. I was probably starting to listen to a couple podcasts at that point. I was playing some Tau, some Tyranids, basically whatever was painted.
You had the perfect chance there to say you listened to Best in Faction. You had the perfect chance. You could have said I started listening to Best in Faction. You could have said that. I'm going to pretend you did.
Well, it was definitely one of the first ones. Definitely the one that I locked into because there was so much Tyranids talk going on. Listening to the FLG stuff at the time was just not nearly as entertaining. Other than Stat Center, please come back, Falcon. Anyway, so we're playing somewhat casually. Things start ramping up. We go to a couple tournaments. We do okay. Hey, we're very excited about the game. And then two things happen. One of which is that Lucas and I get an apartment together. We move off campus, and now we've got two 40K players in an apartment with very little social lives and a full-size table in their living room at all times. So that was awesome. I think that a lot of my friends spent that part of college. I don't know, either doing a ton of really cool academic work or going off and partying a ton and meeting lots of girls. I broke up with my girlfriend and went to play more 40K. It was a real good time. And then everything got shut down and they said, hey, you guys, you can't leave your house. You're stuck there playing 40K and painting. And we said, oh, darn. What are we going to do?
We still wanted to go out and try to make social lives.
Yeah, I was... I mean, honestly, not being able to go to 40K League anymore was a bummer, but we made do. We met up with single individuals and took appropriate precautions after a while. And then Jason starts running his underground 40K tournaments, which I generally would not recommend people going to for COVID-related reasons, but as two 21-year-olds who never interacted with the outside world, we made terrible decisions. I went to a bunch of those and got a lot more shark-like. Our meta developed really quickly because ninth edition was new, and everyone was sort of figuring out what was going on. I was able to sink crazy amounts of hours because I had nothing better to work on than early ninth edition bugs. And from there, things took off really quickly. Started doing much better at tournaments. Started traveling to a couple of events. But yeah, and things have been finishing up really well. Had a really solid last season, and really excited for what we're gonna have going on now that things are really starting to open back up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how are you enjoying your life now that you have podcasting and editing and tournament going? All this 40K.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good time because 40K was already taking up, like 80% of my day-to-day mental space, as I'm taking a year off of school, and and the work that I'm doing doesn't take up too much of my brain space. So suddenly that just became productive and meaningful and narrative-oriented, and not just the way that I build a social network. So I could not be happier right now. Things are going fantastic.
Yeah, we're certainly happy to have you. So, Tyler is on the Best in Faction, the Next Generation podcast that records at 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings normally. This week you're recording Friday night, and we're recording in your spot Saturday morning, actually. So BIFPOD Saturday morning, your Friday night. You do editing for some of the shows on the Frontline Gaming Network. You do editing for some shows on the Best in Tabletop Network. Is there anything else you'd like to plug or mention before we wrap up and head to part 2?
I will give a quick plug. If you are in the Northern California area, we do have a major coming up in about a month's time. The first weekend in April, it's going to be in Sacramento. We've been growing those GTs a little bit all the time, but this one should be real big. It's a fantastic space. The food there is great, and it's super cheap. It's going to be a great time. Look for the Badger Major, April 6th-ish, something like that.
The Badger is a word that they've done that tournament before, right? This isn't the first time they're doing the Badger. Whatever.
That's their company. They do a GT every 2 out of every 3 months, but this is the first one they're jumping up to major status, getting some more outside support. Should be a good time.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up with Tyler for here, and we're going to head to part 2. Part 2 is going to be behind our subscriber wall when our subscriber YouTube subscriber section when it goes live next week. For now, we'll put this up where everybody can see it. But part 2 of all of Chasing the Narrative is going to be in the behind the subscriber wall. I don't like the word wall, but I haven't come up with a better word for it yet. The subscriber status, like you're going to have to be a paid subscriber on YouTube to get part 2 of this show, part 2 of Art of War, part 2 of this show, part 2 of War. If you want all of the commentary bat reps that we're doing, only some of those are going to be free. The rest are going to be behind it. Basically, we're doing a large amount of post-production that we didn't do before. We need a way to pay for all of that. So we're going to ask you guys to, if you want more, you can pay for more. Okay, that's all going live next week. For now, though, we're going to head into part 2 here in a second, where I'm going to ask Tyler to explain technical concepts to the old person, which is me. I don't know when this happened, when I became the out-of-touch old person, but it happened, and now Tyler's going to help me. So if you think that sounds fun, head to part 2, and we'll see you guys there. But as for now, thanks for joining us for part 1. We'll talk to you soon.